Hello everyone, this is James Art Ville, and I am going to be illustrating some Zelda fan art for the Zelda Creator Con hosted by Linktober. Music provided by my father, Art Guitar Turo. So I have a blank canvas here, but I'm actually not going to be starting from scratch. I have already sketched out something, Zelda from Breath of the Wild. So this is what I call wireframe, kind of like basically the skeleton structure of the character, using lines, circles, basic shapes, what have you. Then I lower the opacity, and I draw over on top, and I create basically my sketch. This is a rough pencil drawing. It's not perfect, it's messy, it's sketchy. That's the point. And I draw the character again by lowering the opacity here and making my finished line art. I like tracing, so tracing over my sketch is considerably easier than starting from a pen on white paper with nothing. So this is my process. I've already colored this as well, the flat colors, and you can see everything is in layers, so I can toggle off and on. Real simple. So what I'm going to be doing now is adding some shadows, adding the background, and hopefully finish this in time for the end of the stream. I might not get to the very end, but at the very least I can definitely get some shadows done on her character. And on the left I have here just a slideshow of my Zelda art. Most of it is from the Linktober that I participated in last year, but I got a few other illustrations in there thrown in as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. Call it Shades. And for anyone wondering, the program that I'm using is called Clip Studio Paint. And this is on the iOS device, so this is an iPad. I have also used this on a desktop computer as well. And what I love about Clip Studio is that it's basically a drawing illustration program. It used to be called Manga Studio, great for comics. And this is actually what I use to make my graphic novel, Raising Dragons. You can find that on my website or on Amazon. So back to Zelda here. The way that I shade, I typically use a cell shading. Cell shading is basically just cartoony type, one color, two color shading. And so I take a pen tool, the G pen right here. This is my stroke. For my shadows, I don't use black. And the reason for that is because black doesn't look good on skin. So this is obviously 100% black. I tone it down to about 35%. And as a skin tone, it just looks kind of like she's a zombie. I don't know. I don't like black. So what I tend to do is I use like a dark red instead. Hopefully you can see the difference there. Much better for skin, right? Okay, so this is obviously a thick brush. I'm gonna go ahead and bring it down. Yeah, that's much better. And I'm going to just start drawing shapes to where I think the shadow would be. So now I have to ask myself, where is the light gonna be from? Do I want, and I'm thinking, I probably want the sun over here, so the light is going to be in this direction. That's what I'm thinking. So therefore, all the shadows are going to be cast on this side of her face. Even the eyeball gets some shadow. People ask me, how do I know where the shadow is supposed to be? And the simple answer is, I don't. Like, there really isn't like a right or wrong. I just do my best. You know, I take a shape and I cut it in half, or I cut it into thirds, and I shade one section. And if it doesn't look right, then I add more or I delete some. So let me show you what this looks like then. So I draw these lines. And what good is that going to do me? Using Clip Paint Studio, the Paint Bucket Fill tool, I can click and fill in these areas, even though my shade layer is just these lines. If I were to click here anywhere on this layer with the Paint Bucket tool, it'll fill in absolutely everything, and that's not what I want. But having these layers, active and selected. This one, specifically the line art, is a reference layer, which is awesome, which a feature that Clip Studio offers. I can set my Paint Bucket tool to reference layer. So now, when I'm on my shade layer, but I click, it's going to acknowledge the lines on my line art layer, even though I'm still only shading my shade layer. I use this feature all the time. Alright, so obviously I made a mistake here. Her whole face got colored in. And the reason for that is because there's a gap in my line somewhere. Right there. That little pixel right there. Yeah, so that gap there meant that my fill was going to bleed over the whole thing. And Clip Studio addresses that as well. There's a close gap functionality in the settings. So by addressing the close gap, I can click and it'll automatically find the gap. And if it's a big gap, I can set the close gap setting to a larger, and it'll automatically fill that in. That way I don't have to worry about having perfect lines. So I am using an iPad Pro, the 12-inch. The nice thing about Clip Studio is it'll work on many different hardware. So you have the Wacom Mobile Studio. I used to have the Wacom Companion, drawing tablets. You know, very nice units, very expensive as well. But I kind of downgraded. I like the iPad. It's small. It's very intuitive. It feels more natural to draw. So I'm going to give you another tip that I use. So I'm drawing the shadow lines, and I'm trying to stay obviously like within the lines, but you know, if I can go anywhere essentially, and I don't want that. So there's an option here in my layer, and you see this pink icon next to my layer. That's going to reference the layer beneath, which is my color layer. So now everything that I draw is going to reference this color layer because I have that right beneath. And what that means is if I were to draw a line and go beyond, it's going to only display based on the information from the previous layer, the layer right underneath. So now I don't have to worry about whether or not my lines are going to stay within my line art. Little things like that are definitely time savers. When it comes to digital art, everybody has their own method. There's really no right or wrong way of doing it. But it certainly is helpful to have knowledge of these kinds of shortcuts to save you time, to save you a headache, especially if you're starting out. And you're wondering, how does everyone do it? And how do they do it so quickly? It takes me 10 hours to do a single digital illustration, and this amazing person can, pump it out in 2 hours or less, and it looks way better. Well, chances are they have a system. They figured it out, and they're utilizing it. And those are things that you can learn by watching, videos, just like this one, live streams, tutorials. That's where I picked up some of these. So there's no harm in learning from those who have come before you. Share the wisdom, share the knowledge, and we're all better artists for it. Yeah, so I'm reading the comments, and some people are definitely commenting about Clip Studio Paint. It's not as expensive as Adobe Photoshop. I mean, Photoshop is great. It's just it does too many things, and that kind of bogs it down. It's very resource intensive. You need a lot of RAM on your computer, a lot of memory. Sometimes it crashes on me. Clip Studio, I have very good performance history with. Very rarely will it crash on you. And the files, the files are only a fraction of what a Photoshop file would be. So that allows me to work in high resolution. So for some of you techies out there who like the numbers, you're wondering my canvas size. No, I'll show you. So this canvas is 11, almost 12 inches by 16, almost 17 inches. And the resolution is 1200 DPI. That sounds like overkill. It probably is. Most people only work in 300 DPI. But what I say is, if my system can handle it, if the iPad can handle it, if the program can handle it, why not? Go bigger. In the end, it's going to look better because it allows you to really put in a lot of detail. It allows you to zoom out, and when you finish your image and you shrink it down for web viewing, it's just going to look all the better for it. Now, I see I have a mistake here. I have the line in her collar going through her hair. Obviously, that's a problem, so I'm going to go ahead and erase that here. Yeah, in 1200 DPI, like when I was working on the graphic novel, it was almost necessary because when printing, which I printed, sent this off to the printer to have it, professionally printed. Anything lower, because the text is rasterized, and that doesn't look good if it's going to be all blurry and fuzzy. So having that 1200 DPI was definitely key to making the graphic novel look as good as it does. This isn't my first time drawing Breath of the Wild Zelda, but this is my first time doing so with her adventuring outfit. My other illustration I have featuring this Zelda is wearing her goddess ceremony dress, the white one. And I personally like her adventuring garb a lot. And I'm excited to see her in the sequel. I hope they give her a prominent role, not only in the story, but also in the gameplay as well. This is my first live stream, so I hope that everything works out. The quality isn't 1080p, I apologize for that. What else am I looking forward to in the sequel? Well, a lot of things, really. More linear storytelling. I love the open world of Breath of the Wild, but I do miss the traditional formula, I guess you could call it. And I think that Nintendo now, after making Zelda games for so many years, I think that they can really strike a balance between the open world freedom and the linear storytelling. I think I don't expect them to close off Hyrule. That doesn't make any sense at this point. But at the same time, there's got to be some structure, given that you can't just retread old territory and expect there to be a brand new game worth of content there. I personally would love to see beyond Hyrule, venturing into other kingdoms. That's kind of a pipe dream. What's beyond the sea? What about other kingdoms? Moving forward, I think Nintendo is going to probably try to stray away from the timeline. And I personally subscribe to the theory that Breath of the Wild is a dragon break where all the timelines converge. I like that theory. And what really gets me excited is the fact that the writer for Breath of the Wild was also the one who wrote the story for Skyward Sword. And he's also in charge of writing the story for Breath of the Wild sequel. So considering how you have the same guy, this is his third, game, and Breath of the Wild did have quite a few Skyward Sword references. I would love this to be like a trilogy of sorts, and really go full circle. Skyward Sword is the beginning of the timeline, and Breath of the Wild is arguably at the end of the timeline. It would be nice to have the Breath of the Wild sequel address demise, address the curse, address the history of Hyrule, and for all intents and purposes, bring an end to it. Bring some closure. Break the curse. What have you. Have something that satisfies the fans, but also frees up Nintendo so they don't feel tied down to the timeline anymore, because I think that's really limiting at this point. Those games are great, but at this point the series is kind of anchored by them, held back. It would be nice to have that closure so then they can move forward and bring new enemies, enemies that don't include Demise, Ganondorf, the Demon King, and the Curse. Some fresh stories, some new faces, some new environments. I'm not suggesting they make a Zelda game without Zelda and Link. And I don't mean spin-offs, where it's oh yeah, the island, it was never there, or Majora's Mask had a very similar theme where Fate of Termina, it was a creation of Majora. It was never really real. It's that's very frustrating for a fan, to be invested in a world and the characters and then just be written off as, oh yeah, that's gone. So I hope they don't do that again. The interesting thing about Ganondorf, though, like obviously he's confirmed to come back for the sequel. Ganondorf has only ever been one man. He's never been reborn. So I'm hoping that with the resurrection of Ganondorf here in the sequel, that he will retain memory of all the times he's been defeated before by the hero in Zelda. Like, that would be awesome for him to recollect that. And there was an interesting theory on YouTube that suggests that, if Ganondorf is really smart, like, he's going to realize, having been defeated several times now at this point, that his biggest threat isn't Link or Zelda, but rather the Master Sword. And so if he can find a way to cut off Link's ability to use the Blade of Evil's Bane, then that'll essentially guarantee victory. And maybe the glow on Link's, his right hand in the trailer, maybe that's suggesting something along that lines where Link can't use the Master Sword anymore, and he has to unlock that ability again. He has to recover from that injury. And that's a good way to approach it from a gameplay point of view too, because at the end of Breath of the Wild, you're so overpowered. You can't start the sequel with with so much strength, and rather than just go the Metroid route where you just lose everything at the beginning of every game, that there's a story aspect to why Link can't use the Master Sword, and therefore maybe that's why Zelda can kind of pick up that slack and help Link in ways where he is unable to use maybe the Sheikah Slate. Like, maybe Zelda's the one who uses the Sheikah Slate this time around, and maybe Link has new abilities. Maybe that curse on his arm grants him some new abilities that unforeseen by Ganondorf. That would be really cool. Alright, before I move any further on the shading, I want to do one more thing too. It's kind of a personal style choice. I created a new layer called Gradients. And I do this in conjunction with the shadows, the shading. But I'm going to bring this down to about 35% as well. But I like to, let's see, refer multiple. There we go. Okay, I got that here selected. Wonderful. So, to really make things have a little more depth, I just add a linear gradient. See there? And I do that not everywhere, but in certain locations. So here, forehead, a little bit of a dark above there. Down here. Her ear. It's subtle, but I think it's really nice. And I can do the same thing with, the rest of her, really. So a typical shading session, I would say, would last about 2 hours. So I don't expect to finish this entire image during this stream. what I do on my YouTube channel is I record my drawing sessions, but then I just play them back sped up. I call them quick draws. So what would normally take me, a good 5 hours, you could watch, in the course of 15 minutes. And, so pros and cons of doing that, the pros, obviously, you're not sitting there for 5 hours watching me illustrate. But the downside of that is that you're not going to get that real-time advice, that real-time, as I'm working, I'm not talking. And that feedback is helpful, especially for, other fellow artists who are looking for new techniques, are looking for, just some advice and style. Yeah, speed paint. Which this is not. I'm not speeding this at all. I was just mentioning that in case you check out my YouTube channel, that's what you would expect to see, more of those speed paints. But if this live stream does well, I'll consider doing more. Right now, this is obviously in celebration of the Linktober hosting the first ever Zelda Creator Con, which I'm super stoked about. I was planning on going to several Comic-Cons this year, but of course they all got canceled. So this is, not just the next best thing, but it's an entirely, different beast. It allows me to connect with people, that are not local to my area. Allows me to be able to live stream like this, and draw. Whenever I set up my table at the Comic-Con, I connect to a monitor and I illustrate on the spot. But there's so much, there's transactions, happening and other overhead that I don't get the focus and the attention on my art like I do in a platform like this. So I really wanted to have Zelda music playing in the background, but YouTube has a pretty strict copyright policy, so that makes sense. But on the Discord server, I do have a link there of a Spotify playlist that I created that I listen to almost every day, and it's a Zelda playlist, and it's got artists like Theophany, Rosen, and Sam Dillard, and it's just amazing arrangements, remixes, orchestrated. It's pretty epic. All, of course, Zelda related. I love how intricately detailed Zelda's outfit is here. Okay. So by giving shadows beneath these lines, really help give the look that these are, that they overlap each other. It's not just a flat texture. I think the Zelda Creator Con will definitely happen again. I mean, really, I see no reason why not. The tickets are really affordable, and it doesn't really cost us anything to stream our content or to have chat rooms and Discord. So considering that it's not really costing us a whole lot, and we're all promoting it word of mouth, we're promoting it on our social media channels. Yeah, we can do this every year. It's ultimately it's up to Joel, the creator of Linktober. It's up to him, but I'm sure he'll consider it. And our opinion, our voice, our feedback will have a large role to play there. I expect there to be several surveys at the end of this. Asking, hey, what do you think? Did you like it? Do you want to do it again? And as things open up later in the year, I'll still go to Comic-Con. I'll still have my tables. This isn't a substitute, but it definitely is a welcome addition. Okay. Not done, but looking good. So something else that I'll probably do, I'll do more later than I will right now. So cell shading, I briefly mentioned earlier, these hard lines, right? But I think what I will do is I will go through and I'll use the blend tool, and that'll allow me to, let me fix that. That's way too big. Oh, good point. Let me try saving. I don't want to lose my progress. Clip Studio Paint has an auto-save feature, so, thank God for that. There we go. Okay, maybe too much. There we go. Especially on the skin. Having a soft edge on the skin, I think it makes more sense. It's still essentially cell shaded, but now it's just got a softer edge in some areas. And be picky and choosy, have it blend into soft, and then you can go to the harder edge. I mean, really, there is a science to it. Ideally, if you have overhang like the sleeve here, that's casting a very direct shadow close up, so that's going to be a hard edge. But as we move further down the arm, it'll be a softer edge, because that's really just going to be the light and the shadow from the sun, which is a much farther cast, as opposed to right here where it's almost direct. So I'm going to keep that hard line there. That's kind of the thinking behind this. Okay, like I said, I'm just showing you as an example. I'll go through and I'll do that later. I really should finish shading her. I think I'm almost done. Her legs and her belt. So, how many artists are there? If you are an artist, even if you draw stick figures, write a comment in the chat board. I'd like to see how many other people out here not only enjoy art, but like to create it too. So for these shadows, it's pretty much just I'm following the contour of the shapes itself, because these are just, cast down shadows. Then I go back and I use the paint bucket tool and I fill it in. I respect pixel art. I used to do some pixel animations when I used to, back in the day, there was a program called RM2K. Let's see, RM2K. It's an RPG maker, basically. Yeah, RPG Maker 2000. And so I used to make some sprites, custom sprites for the characters, and animations, battle animations, walking animations, and so that's my experience when it comes to sprite work. But I don't do that anymore. That was a long time ago. It's fun though. Made some crazy games. the funny thing too about using the iPad to draw is that you don't see my cursor because there is none. If I were using a PC and the Wacom, you'd be able to essentially see, a mouse cursor where I'm hovering. But here, you pretty much only see my input as I'm touching the screen. So for the most part, you're just seeing the screen move and rotate, and then suddenly there's a line there. So that's got to be a little jarring. The lines don't appear out of nowhere. Honestly, I am putting pen to screen here. Okay, well, I think she's good to go. So, I mean, the hair here is behind her, so it's all going to be dark because of, the light is in front of her, so I'm not going to worry about any fancy shapes in this region here. Okay, moving on to the next step, I guess, and that would be the highlights. I'll create a new layer for that. Again, I checked this, it's not quite a layer mask, but it references what's below, and you can stack it, I guess is the word, so everything will be referencing essentially this color layer here. So let me give this a name, highlights. I'm going to lower the opacity, probably to 50. Now for highlights, I do use white. White is okay, I think. So definitely some for the lips here. Yeah, that looks weird. And the hair. Please excuse my dog. She's barking. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. I want to add some glow to her cheeks, but I don't want to use the hard pen because, if I do something like this, it'll just make her look silly, like a cartoon or something. So I'm just going to use an airbrush, basically. And the same thing for the bridge of the nose. Smaller. There we go. It's subtle. That's okay. If you follow my work, you'll probably notice that I have quite a variety of style. Very rarely will two illustrations look like they were made by the same artist. I apologize for that. I like to experiment with different styles. I like to try new things. And depending on what I'm drawing, sometimes I'll do cell shading, sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll add highlights to the edge. Sometimes I won't. It just depends on the mood and honestly just the look of the picture itself too. So these highlights on her legs, I definitely have them softer. I don't think cell shading would look good there. Okay. It's subtle, but you know, it's enough to give her a little bit more definition, a little more pop. Now, let me do the same thing here, the hair. What I'm doing now, honestly, I don't even know if it's going to look good until I zoom out. So I'm just kind of experimenting. Just try it out. It's the wonder of digital art. You try it. If it looks good, go for it. If it didn't, well, you learned something. And that's not bad. I would like to add highlights here, but it doesn't make any sense because it's behind her. I don't know, maybe I should add some dark shapes. I mean, how would that look? No, not a fan. Scratch that. I don't know, something's missing. Okay, I think I do need some more shadows here. A different color shadows. Otherwise, it looks too flat, you know? There's got to be some definition to her hair. Oops. Yes. Highlights and shadows are where the magic is. I agree. That's where you gotta be creative too. I mean, the flat coloring, that's easy. You don't really have to think about it. You just have to pick your color, point and click, bam, done. And even like the line art, you know, is just tracing. I mean, the way that I do it at least. Sketching requires creativity because that's where you're actually putting in the details of the drawing. But once the details are down, the line art is just pretty much tracing. Okay, so it just occurred to me that her arm here should have a shadow cast like that. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know, like, no, wrong color. I kind of... it takes away the shadows that I put in here, the detail. So like I'm not sure. It's like, oh no. It should technically look like that, but I'm not happy with that. I don't like that look. Maybe just a little bit. There, is that okay? Like I want to acknowledge the fact that this arm is sticking out and is casting a shadow on her body, you know. Yeah, I'm just going to stick with that. Good enough. Well, you know, we got the light. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So the sun is here. should technically be a shadow behind the device in her fingers and under her arm. And I mean, yeah, because her arm is casting a shadow and over her body, and then something like that. I mean, that's what I'm thinking. But I'm gonna ignore that for now, just because I don't like the way that looks. So I'm just gonna choose not to do that, because I can. It's my drawing. I can do whatever I want. I'm normally not this cynical. Alright, one last thing before we move on to the background. And that is called color holds. Color hold is basically a fancy word for coloring the line art so that it's not, black. A lot of comic books are black, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. But in my illustrations, I actually like coloring the line art very much. Even if it's just subtle, even if it's it's a dark color, it's not, I'm not making it pink or anything. So to do that, well, I guess I'll explain what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm just going to choose a color. And here we go. This is the color I want my line art to be. So I pretty much just fill it all in. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my line art layer, and it'll create a selection, just like this. And then I'm going back to my color holds layer, and I'm going to apply this selection as a mask, a layer mask. And voila. Black lines, colored lines. And so with this color, it brings warmth. Now she, the whole thing looks like she's bathed in warm light as opposed to, the dark black. A few things though is that her eyes and her eyebrows and her eyelashes are colored as well. So what I'm going to do is take my pen, and I'm just going to go over this layer, and I still have my mask in place, so I don't have to worry about being perfect in my lines, but I do get to fill in this area because I do want this to be black. The face, especially the eyes, are going to be the thing that people love to see the most. Having thick black eyelashes, that'll do it every time. Every time. There. Wonderful. Now let me save, because I don't want to lose my progress. Bam! See, it saves so quickly. Seriously, Photoshop takes 30 seconds to save. Or more. For a file this big. Okay, I guess I'm ready for the background now. Ooh, look at that. Let's see, what time is it? So it's 3:47. My streaming schedule was technically from 3 to 3:30, but I'm going to go ahead and just keep going. I'll probably stop around 4. That way I can get a good solid hour in. And if I'm not done, I'll just have to finish this on my own. And I'll definitely post this on the Discord server on the Zelda CreatorCon. So definitely be on the lookout for it when it's all said and done. So I'm going to put all my Zelda images in a folder, called the foreground, and then make a new folder, call it background. It's not rocket science. Alright, so she's definitely outdoors. I'm going to just kind of sketch what I'm looking for. So I'm thinking like a hill, some sort of overlook, more background, and it's layered obviously, and you know, like mountains and stuff. Like I don't want to put like Hyrule Castle here. I think that'd be too cliche. She's an adventurer, so like I want her to be elsewhere in Hyrule. Maybe I'll put like a Sheikah Tower, you know, somewhere in the background here. Yeah, that'd be cool. And of course, maybe like another one over here because they're not too far away from each other. And yeah, give some texture to this. Clouds, definitely gotta have clouds. Now, the thing I was really looking forward to was making some sort of like flowery effect. I want there to be the silent princess flowers, you know, like everywhere. Almost as if like this was still part of the ending cutscene. And I want the flower petals to be like flying. I may want to raise it up a bit more, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know where my horizon line should be. I might make several adjustments. But I want flower petals to be, like, in the air, swirling, you know, as the wind is blowing. That's my idea, at least. Okay, so this is basically the sketch. So the background, I'm not going to do a line art. So it's going to be just colors and shapes and texture. But I will have my flat colors. So I'll just start with green, I guess, for the grass. And I may want to bring her down in opacity. That way I can, you know, I can still see what I'm doing. Ooh, already I like that look. Oh, that looks good. I'm going to choose a different green now so that I can really break up my different environments here. Okay, cool. Nice sky. Different color for the mountains. Actually, there. Okay, so far so good. I'll be honest, backgrounds are not my my favorite thing to draw. Maybe I'll make that lake. Yeah. Or maybe do like a river. So this is still very rudimentary, just kind of get an idea. I'm actually going to put a folder in front of the foreground, call it effects. And this is where I'm going to put a lot of those petals, the flower petals, which would be very bright blue, almost white color. There we go. So this is going to be still very rough and sketchy. There we go, a bigger brush than that. Lighter white. Yeah, there we go. So some of these I want big because they're going to be in front. And then I'm going to want, a bunch of smaller ones. And the ones in front, I'm going to blur because they're out of focus. Which is simple enough. I'm going to do it now just to show you the effect. But later on I'm going to have to actually, make them the right shape and right color. Okay, I didn't notice a difference, and that's probably because I didn't blur it enough. yeah. Let me give that a stronger blur. There, that's the kind of blur I wanted. Yep. And then of course the background is going to have, flowers everywhere. So I'm doing this now really crude. Just to give you an idea of my vision, what I see in my mind's eye. And I'll probably have to spend a couple more hours, actually making that happen. But our time is almost up, and I think for the most part, you get the idea of what how I illustrate. At least, specifically how I do the shadows, the highlights. Some of the background, if you have any questions, I can take a few minutes here to answer your questions. Technical stuff regarding the program, regarding the tools, or creative stuff, how I tackle, a certain problem that maybe you're experiencing. Let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. Gradient for sunshine. Okay. I'll leave it there. Don't forget to save. Good question. No, I did not use any references for the pose. I did use reference for Zelda's design. I wanted to make sure that I drew her outfit correctly and accurately. So, looking at the concept art and, in-game screenshots was helpful. But the pose, references are helpful. I probably should moving forward. But like I mentioned before, at the very beginning, I just used wireframes. And I just kind of sketched it out, based on how I felt, looked good. And that's typically how I draw. I make my own poses. But sometimes, it's really hard to get certain angles, especially hands, or like the head. If they're looking up at an angle, that's always difficult to do. Well, I continue to show this piece of progress in another video. I think I can. I'll record it on my own and then upload it to my YouTube as a speed paint, basically. So that way you can see me finish it without having to sit through another 2 or 3 hours. Which I'll tell you right now, the background to get it to look the way that I envision it will definitely take a good 2 or 3 hours at least. It's not going to be as quick as it is, casting cell shaded shadows on a character. Yeah, good backgrounds take a long time. So I have written on my website an article where I recommend, basically they're like figurines. They're plastic and they're posable, and they're very helpful for coming up with poses. And so I suggest those if you're coming up, with poses and you're looking through the internet for, stock photos and reference photos, and you can't find exactly what you're looking for. Then I suggest, these plastic little anime figurines, so they're proportioned for comic book or anime manga type characters, and you can find them on Amazon. They come in various different colors. They have different swappable hands. Yeah, very helpful. And basically you pose it, you take a picture of it, and then you can just reference your picture. Alrighty, so it's past 4 o'clock. I've been out here for an hour now, and I think that's a good place to stop. I'm going to be on the Discord server all weekend long, so look me up, James Art Ville. You can ask me questions. You can send me private messages. I'm going to be posting some more art on the sites, and I'll be drawing all weekend long. I have plenty of artwork that I need to work on, Zelda related, my own personal stuff. And if you haven't yet, check out my YouTube. I have lots of videos there. Subscribe, that's really helpful, and I have a website, jamesartville.com. I have prints available of all of my artwork, and I definitely have quite a few Zelda arts available there. They range from 5 inches by 7 inches, all the way up to 11 inch by 17 inches. And I got some stickers too. And I got books. I got graphic novel, children's books. I got a Linktober book out there. I'm going to be releasing a collection of my Linktober illustrations that you've been seeing here on the side slideshow. So look out for that later in the year. Thank you everyone for your comments. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for being a part of this Zelda Creator Con community. It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to have you and to share my artwork with you and your interest. And I'll catch you on the Discord server or whatever social platform that you prefer. Look me up, James Art Ville. I'm pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, you name it.